and actually lived that way with no heat, no running water, no electricity. Up into the 70s, he finally got electricity for a hot plate, is what he said, a hot plate and an electric fan. And then finally was admitted to a nursing home in 1985 and lived there for 12 more years. So, yeah, a remarkable guy. And when he passed away, he willed his paintings to a friend, the ones that he had left, and that friend tried to maintain them for a while and then eventually donated them to Rancocas County. So we have a whole museum dedicated to Hugh Campbell's art. There were actually over 400 paintings, if you can imagine, stuffed away in this guy's little shack. So they were either the ones he couldn't sell or the ones he couldn't part with. And yeah, it's a remarkable story. And you can go on, we made a documentary about his life. If you go on the Parks website, or if you Google Hugh Campbell American Artist on YouTube, you'll be able to see that.
What's his paintings worth?
I'm sorry?
What's his paintings worth?
So, a small painting, say 12 by 12, it goes anywhere from $500 to $1,000. I've seen them on some auction sites, some of his bigger works for as much as $10,000. And there's a ton of people who have 5 or 6 of his paintings. Who they were nice enough to buy the paintings from him to kind of help sustain him. And they're wonderful. He's a real legitimate artist. He has an auction record. You can go and look up his art, and people deal. If you go to New Hope or Lambertville, and you go in there and you ask them, do you have any Hugh Campbells? They're liable to find something for you.
Yeah, and he used to do it also for a meal. Sometimes you paint for a meal. Or
yes. So obviously we're familiar with the art scene around Mount Holly.
Oh, yeah.
And we actually have little sketches that he would do when children would come out of the movie theater. He would stop them and sketch them real quick, hoping then he could sell that sketch to their parents. And he was a tough businessman, because we probably have 30 or 40 of those sketches of little kids that he wouldn't part with unless he got money. So. Yeah, absolutely, right there. And it even said sometimes he would put 5 minutes on it, so you knew he did it quickly. So how is the creek important today? So mostly it's recreation, right? We certainly, outside, we don't really do any business along the creek. And if we did, it would probably be recreation related. Fishing, certainly. And what's more important is ecologically, is the creek is really the cleanser of the county. Anything that you do here is eventually going to end up in the water system, and it's going to eventually end up impacting us. So we hear a lot of stuff about plastics and things like that in the water, and that's certainly true. But even chemicals and fertilizers and things like that can throw the balance off. Smithville Lake, which you see the guy at the bottom with the nice bass there, really well done by him, is not far from sod farms. And of course, sod farms and corn and soybeans and everything are really huge around here. So we need to sustain the farmer, but every year we have to shut down Smithville Lake because it gets an algae bloom. It gets blue-green algae, and it's probably exacerbated by the nearby sod farms. Yeah, you see a nice little view above the creek there in Smithville. I've been lobbying my boss for years to get us a nice pontoon boat, and we could do science excursions in the state parks on the Rancocas Creek. You guys are all in favor of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Again, that shows you that drainage area of the Rancocas Creek from really, there's that ridge that runs from Burlington in the west along the Delaware River, and it stays just north of Mount Holly and works its way across the whole county out into Ocean County. So everything in gray you see to the north is, I guess, the Assaskunk drainage. And then everything you see in gray down to the bottom, I guess would be what adds on into the Malacca, right?
The Malacca watershed.
Right. So, yeah, it's quite impressive. And we also understand everybody's familiar here with Pineland Adventures down the road. So, starting this summer, they're going to start doing excursions on the Rancocas Creek. So, where they're going to take canoes up to the Rancocas. I'm not exactly sure which section yet. And they will put people in there. They'll float down either to Smithville or Mount Holly or Birmingham, somewhere like that. And they'll pick them up and they'll trailer them back. So we're really looking forward to that. There hasn't been official canoeing on the Rancocas Creek since Hack's Canoe Rental closed in Mount Holly in, I want to say it was probably 86 or 87. Clark's Canoe is open sometimes in Pemberton, and they do a little. It's been a real challenge trying to maintain the creek, especially this past year since we've had so much rain and everything gets saturated and the trees fall over and across the creek, and it's just not that easy to get out there with a chainsaw and a boat and clear some of those big trees. So I don't know if that was 10. How about this? One more thing. There is a group called the Rancocas Pathways, and they are trying to get the Rancocas Creek named as a heritage trail. So it would kind of be like a National Historic Site or national park, but it would be strictly for the creek. And they have to do a ton of stuff. They've done some archaeology. They have to get a ton of history together, and then of course, you know, it's really an act of Congress. They send in their application, and hopefully good things will happen. Ton of American bald eagles on the creek, and the DEP and the state are really interested in seeing these eagles do well. So there are a lot of restrictions on things we can do on the creek. There's only so many places that you can have canoe rentals and have actually access to the creek. They will try and limit that for the eagles. And they're making a wonderful comeback. A couple that was just up at Mercer Lake in Mercer County said that they were all over the place like turkey buzzards. So I'm hoping they didn't get it wrong. So I believe, yep. So that's it. Do you have any questions I can answer for you? Yes.
Do you find old Indian settlements along the river?
So we're really lucky in Burlington County. Certainly we have this tremendous Native American history, and we're lucky enough now, we have a map from 1673, so it's a very old map. A Dutch cartographer did it in 1673, and he mentioned 3 significant Native American villages along the creek. One of them was right here, which is right by Smithville. It's called Alumata. The other one was right in the Forks in Hainesport, and that was called San Hickney. And then there was a third one out here in Delran. That one they haven't named, but again, it was a significant site. And what's good for us now is all of them are part of the park system, so they'll never be developed. And in fact, the one in Delran, when they started developing that park, they always have to do archaeology. Anything that has to do with state funds or municipal funds gets an archaeological study. And when they started the one in Delran, they found so many artifacts and such a footprint from the Native Americans that they decided to scale back the plan a little bit. They were planning on bathrooms and picnic pavilions and things like that, and they decided just to leave more as it was for future generations to study. So Native Americans, it's a wonder we don't find more. I mean, you figure, again, after the last ice age, human beings started populating Burlington County. So by 15,000, 12,000 years ago, it's hard to tell, there were probably people living here in Burlington County. So it's just the number, just you think about, we've only been here as Europeans for 400 years. And the impact we've made and everything we've left, you can imagine thousands and thousands and thousands of years And of course, you know, you look at your collection here in the case, and yeah, it's clear that they were very industrious, very smart, and they were everywhere here in Burlington County. Anybody else?
You say you're clearing the streams, the creek, right?
Yeah.
Now, Pinelands won't let you do that.
No, probably not. And the DEP is very careful with what we do also. But it seems, well, I don't want to get in a tug of war with environmentalists, certainly. But, and everybody loves the idea of the American bald eagle coming back and all of this wildlife. American beaver are all over now, of course. But we'd like to enjoy them too. You know what I mean? And we have here is a navigable river that runs through the whole county. And it seems a tragedy if we didn't maintain that and encourage people to get out there and use it. You see people all over in the South where they have big reservoirs and lakes, and there's boats and people having a good time and that, you know, things like that. And it seems like we're just ignoring the Rancocas a little bit. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
we tried to clean the stream right here, and Pinelands wouldn't let us.
Yeah, there is a big push for kind of letting Mother Nature take its course. And we understand that in some circumstances, but there, like you said, I mean, if a creek just gets all junked up in there, you know,
Which it
yeah.
is,
Right, yeah, it seems an awful waste.
yeah.
Yeah, the beavers, yeah, we have beaver in Smithville, and sometimes we have to play hide and seek with them. Sometimes my boss pretends like they're not out there, but they are so industrious that eventually the ponds overflow their banks and end up covering trails and things like that, and then we have to persuade them on their way. We did just have a sighting. One of the naturalists was very excited because she saw a mink in one of the parks. So, yep, they keep an eye out for that kind of thing, so,
I actually
Beaver
think
is
I saw
very smart.
one
yes.
here just a couple weeks ago,
Did you?
across from one side Willow Grove to the other where the swamp is.
Oh, I about to see that. So they're making a comeback.
And I've seen them years ago down in Jenkins.
Okay. Yeah. So we're all, you know, we're real, and then of course, everybody down, you guys are nice enough to take our black bears when they find them up north. We really appreciate that. I did talk to a guy and he said they're, black bear are in every county now in the state. So they got us surrounded, I guess. Watch your picnic baskets.
There was a beaver over in Mount Laurel, and he would roll, the banks are real high,
Mhm.
and he would go up and take a piece of firewood out of the people's, and roll it down into the creek, and jam it in the pipe, then fill it with sticks and so forth.
Amazing, aren't they?
And the township would pay me to come unclog it. And I really liked that beaver. And about every 3 or 4 weeks, I'd have to go over and unclog it. And the same size piece of firewood would be jammed in there. He would pick that size
He
firewood.
knew what he was doing.
Yep.
So I
You didn't take it
saw.
far away, did you?
Yeah, not long ago, it was either on the Smithsonian Channel or one of the nature channels, where they're having that trouble with beaver. A lot of times they'll build their dams right into a piece of conduit because that's where the water's running. So what they did, they found out that the beaver are so industrious, they're nutty. They are psychopathic about fixing their dams. So if they could put a radio transmitter somewhere on the dam of trickling water, the beaver would think that the dam was springing a leak, and he would work in that area repairing the dam. And by doing that, they could get him to move out of the conduit and at least live, happily side by side. But who knew that you could play psychological games with a beaver, right? And they're trying to put you out of work.
I know.
They should have renamed your company, Rich, call it Iverson and Beaver.
You're Giverson?
Yeah.
So Giverson's obviously one of the oldest names here in Burlington County. And we have, one of the programs I do, just a shameless plug here, is court cases from the 1600s. So Quaker jurisprudence. And I always have to tell anybody, when I do that program, if I'm talking about somebody you're related to, I apologize. The crimes are not very different from what we see today. The punishments, on the other hand, are a far cry. Certainly there was no justice for minorities, but women were treated very different in the court system. There was one case where a couple they were charged with fornication because they had a baby 3 months after they were married. So they tried to do their best, but it wasn't good enough, and the man had to pay a fine, and the wife was to be beaten at a cart's tail from the marketplace to the river in Burlington, or her husband could choose to pay a fine. So I can see that sentencing day, and he's like, all right, just give me a minute, I'm thinking about it.
Take the beating.
Right. It's like, how far? How much? So yeah, it's very interesting to look into that time in our history and see what life was like, certainly. And Giverson's, we go through records all the time, so Giverson's one of those names. He's very proud. All right, if that's it, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Eric has a lot of other programs he does, and so I think we can have him come out again maybe after the summer when we start another speaker.
Yeah, certainly.
Right?
Yeah, we talk about the battles in the Revolution. We do the court cases, the Timbuktu stuff, so a little bit of everything.
Yeah, great. That would be great.